Abuse on Women, Post-Relationship Healing with Clara from Women Aware. Please note that today's show discusses of a topic that can be very sensitive. Abuse on women is a real subject. It's something that affects women every single day and way too much. We're continuing our 3-part series on abuse on women. Last episode, we talked about the cycle of abuse. Today, we're discussing post-relationship healing. And our next episode is going to be about the dynamics between the two and the call to action. Have you been affected by a toxic relationship or have lived some kind of abuse? If so, this episode is for you. Welcome aboard the podcast, A Women's Spark with Janik, a place to show women how powerful they are and remind them of the spark that they carry, the strength that gets them up every single time. This is a place to feel seen and understood when we don't fully have what it takes to get back up on a hard day. This podcast is to help women heal and become the best version of themselves during the roller coaster of life. We're building a community of women that want to help one another and inspire each other to become stronger and more united, as we were born to be. On today's episode, the second of a series of 3 on abuse on women, we're going to have Clara from Women Aware. Women Aware is an organization of women survivors helping other women survivors of abuse. Today, we're going to touch on healing post-relationship. What does it take? Is it possible to heal? And do we ever remain the same? Abuse is not always recognizable because we care and love our partner that we're with. And often we put aside our needs and boundaries to fit the ones of the person that we love. Let me reiterate the 2 quick facts about female violence from the last episode. On a global scale of violence against women, an estimated 736 million women, that's almost 1 in 3, are subjected to physical or sexual intimate partner violence. That's at least 1 in 3 of the age of 15 and over. Secondly, women and girls are at a higher rate of being subjected to intimate partner violence than men. Indigenous women are considerably more at risk than non-Indigenous women, and non-heterosexual women are more susceptible to sexual violence than heterosexual women. These are extremely concerning and need to be talked about. So, today, we have a survivor of abuse, like I said earlier, a member of Women Aware, an organization here in Montreal. Their mission is to assist and empower survivors who have experienced or are experiencing intimate partner violence, or IPV, and improve their quality of life and affect social change. You can find them at www.womenaware.ca. We're going to come back with Clara after this short break. Welcome back to a Women's Spark podcast with Janik. Today on our podcast, we are welcoming Clara from Women Aware. She's herself a survivor of IPV and now works at Women Aware to help other survivors who are living with or have lived with abuse. She's here to tell us her story, but also to talk about the healing period of a post-relationship. Please welcome our Spark of the Day, Clara. Hi, Clara.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. It's such a poignant subject. So thank you for having the courage to come on the podcast and talk about your story and helping other women who are going through a similar story. On the first question, can you tell us what happens after an abusive relationship?
I think every person is different in terms of how they experience and what they go through. But mainly it's kind of this, what I call detoxing phase after you get out of the relationship, and this feeling of feeling lost. That was something I remember feeling a lot of when I first got out of my relationship. Was I felt like as if I had lost myself, my sense of identity. I didn't know who I was anymore. And I felt like I needed to reconnect, um, not just to me, but to people around me, because I had lost
Uh-huh.
a lot of connections during that relationship as well. A lot of relationships had gotten fractured in ways that I didn't really want them to.
Uh-huh.
So for me, I'm a visual artist, and that was my power. That was my reclamation, my medium that I used. For other people, sometimes it might be a transformative catalyst, like going to the gym, or music, or creating a podcast, or doing whatever type of activity. People have different avenues, different outlets. But for me, it was really the visual arts. And that was the first thing that I remember losing a lot of in my past relationship was, uh, I didn't really have time, and it's not really time, but opportunity to make art. And if I was making art in that relationship, it was usually met with criticism, or it was othered. A lot of the things that I remembered while I was in the relationship was, "Oh, you can do that another time because you need to do this with me now." Or,
Mm,
"When will you get to live this moment with me again in this way ever?" But that's true of anything, right?
for sure.
Um, so that's kind of a little bit what happens after a relationship. It's really trying to find yourself again and to be compassionate, and to find the images or the words or the process to be soft with ourselves and to be compassionate
Re-
with ourselves.
and maybe even like you've said, reconnecting with ourselves, getting back to our roots and who we really are. Can you
Yeah.
tell the listeners, and I know it varies from one person to another, but how long is a healing period? What would you say is an average time that it takes for someone to heal from an abusive relationship?
It depends, again, like you said, on a variety of factors. Um, in my case, I count myself as very lucky because I did have people that noticed the red flags and stuck around, and once I got out, were there to support me. So I had a support system. But if somebody doesn't have a support system, might take longer. I was actively seeing a therapist who saw the red flags as well while I was in the relationship, and that helped. And then I went to Women Aware because I felt like I needed an extra something, because I still didn't, even though I was talking to my therapist, I didn't see that it was an abusive relationship. And then I spoke to people at Women Aware and, you know, realized, oh, okay, this is abuse. And so I think all of those things culminated together, allowed for, I'd say, slightly faster healing process, but
Mhm.
it's hard to say because things stay with you. You evolve, and there's just some things that you just can't go back to being a certain way after that's happened.
Mm,
And for some individuals, if there's kids involved, they might still have to be in contact with their former partner. So really it can vary. It can vary from some people, their healing process taking several months, and other people it might take them several years, and some people it's just an ebb and flow, and it depends on what
yeah.
resources they have available around them. I'd say that for me, I think I started finally feeling a lot more quote unquote healed, uh, probably around maybe 2022, around that time. You know,
Okay.
um, I was already, feeling pretty shaken because I got out of it around 2020.
Mhm.
I count myself very lucky because a lot of femicide started around that time. So, I think it took me about a full year just to kind of find myself, that reconnecting to myself. And then after that, I think it took about a year for me to build up that self-confidence that I'd had prior to the relationship, if that makes any sense. So it's like
Mhm.
little steps, it's little parts of myself that I started reconnecting to. And
Mhm.
the big the big change for me that I realized was, so for my art business, I realized I was keeping myself small because of the fear of, oh, what if he finds me? What if he does a search and he sees the stuff I'm doing? I'm like, wait. I'm still giving this guy power over me because, you know, I'm holding myself back from doing a lot better and having more opportunities and
and your
owning.
healing process is not finished. So,
Yeah,
yes, as long as you hold on to whatever that person can have as power over you, you're still healing. Is that correct to say?
exactly, exactly. So, once I
Okay.
give myself permission to, you know what? That might happen either way. And, I have support. I have people that believe me. Um, you know, I can't keep I need to take the risk. I can't keep being small. I can't keep giving him permission to make me small like this. And,
Absolutely.
so I took the leap and I said to myself, knowing this might be a actual reality. He might try to reach out in the
Mhm.
future. He might try to reconnect. He might try to search me up or whatever. But I have the tools now.
And in order to protect yourself. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
Clara, we've talked about the healing, but I'd like to give you the floor for you to tell us your full story, if you'd like to give it to the listeners so that they can relate and maybe see some possibility into their potential healing process. So, what is your story, Clara?
So, I was in CEGEP at the time, and this guy was, a regular customer at the cafe I worked at, and we just kept running into each other outside of the coffee shop context, even after I finished my studies. And at some point, he invited me to go grab a coffee and talk. So we just started off like this. I will say I did not think we were going on dates, but in his head, we were going on dates. So,
Okay.
but yeah, so that
How
was
was it so different between the two of you?
um, still don't know. I just remember at some point after what he thought was about the fourth date, he mentioned certain things of like, "Oh, you're holding out, you're playing hard to get," but I kinda like that and stuff, and I was like, "Wait, is this a date?" And he's like, "Yeah, this is what do you think? This is our 4th date." I was like, "Oh, okay." And I felt very culpable. So it's like, "Okay, maybe I led this guy on, maybe I did something, I don't know." I was, very inexperienced and what not. I was young. So I was like, "Okay, well, let's go with it. He doesn't seem like a bad guy, he just seems like he's had a hard life. I've had a hard life too. And, he seems pretty intelligent and interesting and whatnot." So I gave it a go. And, you know, a lot of red flags started showing up, but I didn't know they were red flags at the time. I remember feeling kind of like, oh, this is strange behavior. But I kept thinking in my head that maybe I'm just making a big deal out of things. Um, I was seeing a therapist, for other things when I was in CEGEP, and I think one thing that didn't help was that when I spoke to that therapist and disclosed a little bit of some of the stuff I had spoken about, that I noticed coming up, one of the things she said to me was, "Oh, is this really, something that's there, or do you think it's just certain self-sabotaging behavior of stuff you've experienced before?" And I remember kind of just thinking that and not knowing what to do with it because I didn't feel like I felt like as if I couldn't trust my own thoughts. So I remember not going to see that therapist after that ever again. Um, but I also remember thinking, I can't even trust my own thoughts. So this is where also, having trauma informed or therapists that are well trained in identifying those factors is a big deal and really important. Um, so that was a factor as well. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. It was a lot of things. I mean, a lot of emotional and psychological manipulation and abuse that started in the beginning. Um, things such as either belittling stuff I was doing, I just recently moved actually, and one of the things I found in my uh, stack of stuff, and I'm kind of happy I kept this, but it's also just like it gave me shivers. It was a rule book that he had me write of things that I should or
A
should
rule
not do,
book.
or yeah, and
Oh,
stuff that I
wow.
should accept about him. So one of the things that
Uh,
was written in the rule book is um some days there will be things that you just don't understand about me. The motions need to pass. The motions need to go. Just accept them, let them happen. There's nothing you can do about it. And
cool.
so that was like one of the rules of like I just need to let whatever tantrum he's having pass, and I just need to kind of maintain a blank face.
Had
Um
had there been, because that's a red flag, but had there been any signs of physical violence then, or any signs of verbal abuse by the time you read that book?
well, this was something I physically wrote. He
Okay.
physically sat
Okay.
down with me, and he was like, "Write this down," and I had to write it down in this duotang. Um, and I
Okay.
was like, "Oh my god, I can't believe I still have this." But I mean, one of the things that I, didn't realize was a form of physical violence until like years later when we were talking about it at Women Aware. So one of the earliest things I remember happening or him saying was, he had come over to my place, and then he had left because he didn't wanna stay over to my at my place, and, he called me up right after he got home to tell me, "By the way, you made me so angry that I punched a hole in my coffee table." And I was like, "Oh, uh," and that was, like,
And
something
blaming you
that
for his reaction.
yeah, so
Hmm.
I didn't know what to make of that. I was I remember kind of being like, just dumbfounded, but also feeling like, "Oh, I must have triggered something." Yeah, we're responsible for each other and taking care of each other and whatnot. So that was something that, I didn't realize is considered, physical violence when somebody attacks like physical property and then tries to also like blame it on you. And that would not be the only time that he would do something like that. Um, you know, so that was one of the first examples, and then I remember one of the times I went to go visit him at his place, he actually pointed it out. He took the time, he's like, "Oh yeah, there's the hole I punched when you got me angry."
Hmm. Yeah,
And I was like,
sure.
"Oh, he actually did punch."
I'm sorry.
Yeah, he actually did make
Had it
a
been a one from a prior event, or really that one? I mean, that seems to me a lot of manipulation. And you know what?
yeah.
That brings me to just saying, I'm sorry you went through that. That's I'm dumbfounded by how low people can go. And I'm really sorry you had to go through that. That's just not okay.
Well,
And
it
if earlier you talked about 2020 and 2022, but you talked
mhm.
about Sejep is when you met him. What year was that when you were in Sejep?
So I was in CEGEP, uh, 20 so I think did I meet him in 2014 or 2015? Yeah, 2015. So we were 5 years
Okay.
together. Um, and, so as I said, different things happened. It just snowballed. It didn't help that his mom excused a lot of his behavior. Um,
Ah,
and,
yes,
so
enabling.
yeah, I mean, she very much lived in fear as well. But she also enabled the behavior. She knew that he had
Okay.
this side to him. And,
Okay.
he knew sort of this stuff about himself, but he was like, "Oh, this is just the way
Well,
I am, and you just need to accept it."
but
And
if he
so
had
yeah.
you put it in on paper, he knew he had that about himself. And
Yeah, and I mean years later as it progressed, eventually how I got out of the relationship was that actually, and he did this a lot in the relationship where he would break up, get back together with me, break up, get back together with me. Um, and that happens a lot in
yep.
abusive relationships where we end up taking back the person or going back to the relationship or whatnot. And then one of the times, my aunt like during that year, two of my aunts actually passed away. One of them, I was very, very close to her, and it was a pretty traumatic. Like she had lupus and she needed like a heart transplant, and it was heart transplant gone wrong. So
Okay.
he broke up with me. And I remember him saying to me, "Everybody dies. Get over it. You're putting this thing before me. You're making it to the detriment of our relationship." And I warned him. I was like, "If you break up with me over this, if you tell me that I need to like change my behavior or, like get over this quickly and break up with
Hmm.
me, this is the last time you're doing it." And he was like, "Okay, fine. It's over between us." And he broke up
Was
with
it?
me, and I just refused to take him back. Um,
Okay.
you
Good for
know,
you.
it it helped
Honestly,
that,
good for you.
it helped that, I had, like I said, support, and I had my dad especially. Um, my ex didn't know this, but a few times when he was verbally abusive with me on the phone, I put him on speaker while my dad was in the room. And
Mhm.
after he hung up with me, I would ask my dad, "Is that normal? That's not normal, right? Like that he's talking to me this way?" And thankfully, you know, my dad also agreed that this is not okay,
That wasn't
you know,
right.
and it wasn't right.
And, hats off to you for doing that, because with other conversations I've had, y often, more than not, there's a fear in going to our family members and friends and not and feeling like we're not perfect anymore, or we're doing something wrong in the eyes of the people we love the most. So hats off to you for going to your father, and it takes a lot of courage to do that.
Yeah, well, I didn't call it abuse, like I said at that time. And
Okay.
it's only actually like recently that like formally, I guess, had the discussion with him. Was like, yeah, that relationship I was in, it was abuse. And he was like, "I had a feeling. I knew I didn't wanna push you, and I didn't wanna, you know, put words in your mouth." So,
Mhm.
I'm very grateful to have somebody like my dad, so
Around.
but he
Absolutely.
yeah, so that was kind of I mean, there was a lot of things that happened that year. I also decided back in 2019 to try and go back to university. That made him angry, my ex. And you know, that was a big catalyst in terms of when I finally went back to university because I wanted to become an art therapist, and I still this is what I'm working to do, and I knew I wanted to be a professional artist and everything like that. He never wanted me to do this. He was always like, oh, he wanted me to get into whatever work he was doing and basically
Mhm.
entwine my life like this with him. Yeah,
Making yourself as small as possible to fit into his mold where he can
and
control
control.
you. That's
Exactly.
it.
It's about the control. Once they have you in every sphere, and once you lose your sense of identity, it makes you lose a sense in your decision making. And that was the biggest
Absolutely.
thing was my decision making. Like I had always been a very decisive person prior to meeting him. And then I had to second guess every decision. And then that was the power of the arts afterwards, me getting back into it was every mark making, every intention, every exploration I did was my intentional decision making. And I think that's the power and transformative healing that comes with the arts, especially, at least for me. But yeah, so going back to school and, I still have the emails. Where he,
Mm.
after he broke up with me, where he was like, I realize on the texts and stuff, I realize I tried to sabotage your school. Like, he actively tried to sabotage. I was not allowed to study when I had to make sure the meal was on the table by the time he got home. If I wanted to have study sessions with people, I needed to, like, basically he didn't say, "Oh, it's not you're not asking me permission," but I was asking him permission. And this was something like, people pointed out to me when I was going back to school back in 2019. I
Mhm.
had classmates being like, "That's strange that, your boyfriend wants you to always let him know, or to ask him if it's
Mhm.
okay to do this." You know, um, and if I didn't tell him in advance, if I didn't, let him know, then it would be a huge issue. Like, there would really be hell to pay kind of thing. So,
Oh my word. Oh, thank you for telling us your journey. We're just going to take a quick break, and I want to
absolutely.
come back and because we've talked about what the post relationship, what the healing means. We talked about your story, but I'd like the listeners to know what's on that other side. What's the positive that they can look forward to like give them hope and inspire them to maybe break that cycle of abuse and look forward to that healing part. So stay with us. We'll be right back. We're going to take a short break. Welcome back to the Women Spark podcast with Janik. We're here with Clara from Women Aware. It's an organization that has a vision to see a community free of abuse. It was founded in 1995, and over the last 20 plus years, they've achieved a lot, including through the development of several programs run independently and in conjunction with other organizations to free women of abuse. Today, we're talking about the healing part of leaving an abusive relationship. So please welcome back Clara. Hi, Clara.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's really, thank you for sharing your journey before and, having the courage to speak out about your journey to help other women out there. So I really, really appreciate you having that courage.
We need spaces like this, and I'm very grateful to be able to be invited and to talk about it, because we need to know that it doesn't always last. We're capable of change. We're capable of thriving, and that's the important part.
And we all deserve a safe and happy life, I think.
I totally agree. I couldn't say it better.
Yeah. Can you tell us and people who are going through a similar situation that you went through, what they can look forward to in terms of positive after crossing the bridge and leaving their partner during the healing part of their journey and after the healing?
Once y- once I got out of it, because everybody's journey is different, right? It depends on a multitude of factors.
Yep.
Um, once I got out of it, I just had a deep gratitude and realized a lot more. Uh, you know, I think the impact I have as a person, and that people actually care and um, want me in their life, want me to be involved and present. Um, and I think that's the most important part is, if you're listening and you've experienced something very similar to this, you're valued, you're cared for. Even if I don't know you or haven't met you yet, haven't met you before, your presence on this earth has some kind of ripple effect and has some kind of aura with the people around you. So I know that sometimes people going through certain experiences like this, whether they be high stress or whether they be almost exactly like what I've gone through and people in our organization have gone through, it can feel like you're alone. It can feel like, maybe it's just me. I'm making a big deal out of this. You're not. What you can look forward to is that you have the space and capacity when we don't have that constant stressor, when we don't have that constant person putting us down and trying to make us inferior just so that they can feel a little bit better about themselves and a little bit um, more powerful.
Maybe even avoid their own problems or their own
And
demons.
100% a lot of the times it's to not address and to lack accountability for their own actions.
Absolutely.
And what you can look forward to is being able to more easily tap into that creativity, being able to more easily tap into that inner strength. Um, when we have we're containers, we are like nature. That's the framework I work from in my artistic practice as an ecofeminist. Is that when we cultivate a deep respect and harmony, and when the things around us in our environment are contributing to that respect and harmony and sense of thriving, then we can live with inner peace and happiness and communal peace and happiness and
Mm.
thriving. S-
Clara, this is honestly, I'm listening to you and I'm like, you're soothing my own soul. And so you're definitely healing other people's souls who are listening because everyone is worth it. Everyone is worth having their place on this planet. And feeling alone can be hard. Feeling unseen and unheard can be extremely hard. And so thank you for that. Thank you for telling people what they can look forward to afterwards because it's important to have something to hold on to.
Definitely. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it is hard.
Yeah.
I still have my ups and downs. I still have flashbacks. I still have, days where I feel a little ungrounded, but I have a very powerful support system. I have a very powerful sense of inner peace. I have my creative field, my creative mindset, and that's all I need. So,
Speaking of your creative mindset, what was your spark to get back to yourself and to get back up on your feet, to get back to being the best version of yourself?
um, for that, I think it was a multitude of things. It wasn't just one thing. It was a lot of playing factors that intersected at the same time. So, for a little bit of context, so I was out of school for a while, and I always knew I wanted to pursue a career in art therapy. That never changed. That was always constant. And back in 2019, something just kind of flipped. I had been tutoring some university students for a while back in that time. And, you know, I I had been able to tutor them, and they were going from being D students to being A students. And
Wow.
yeah, I'm very proud of them,
That's
and they
extremely
own that.
uplifting.
Y Yeah, and you know that they're intelligent in their own right. And they just needed somebody supportive, and they just needed somebody to give them a little extra time, and to get creative with them and whatnot. University, you should get on that. And at some point, some of those students, they really inspired me. So I did apply to go back to university at that time.
And that's what's important.
It
It's your own gut feeling to make you feel
Yeah.
better. So,
Yeah, it was as weird as it sounds, the bravest thing I could do or the most courageous thing because he was convinced I wasn't gonna get in. He actively sabotaged my studies, and, I was very proud of myself. I got A's that first semester back. Yeah,
yay! Here you go in your face.
I mean, I wasn't like that, but I was also kind of like, "Oh, I'm actually smart." So, yeah, because
It's never like that, but
um,
in hindsight, it's like,
yeah,
this was for me. And it
yeah.
was probably a step forward for him to leave you alone because it gave you power. You were regaining your power and
It
taking some away from him.
Yeah, because that was part of the leverage was that something he used to always say to me is like, "Oh, I did 1 semester of university. I did 1 semester of university." Like,
Mm,
"Oh, he's
sure.
slightly more educated than me." Mm. It's about, and
Exactly.
again, that's where I say it's about mindset. And so part of it was that. Part of it was I started making it a point to go back to certain life drawing sessions and get back into my creativity mindset. That was one of the first things he took away from me,
Mm.
in terms of time, was to do my creative practice. So, me actively, and I mean, my technique was shit when I went back. It was like, and for my standards, but still I kept going and I went and I got back into drawing, I got back into doodling, and I got back into making art. And, that's, again, that was the first thing he took away from me. He didn't outright say, you can't make art. It would be things like, what are you going to do with this career anyways? Or criticizing my techniques, or um, telling me, "Oh, well, you can make that. You can do your art any day, but this moment with me, you're not gonna have a moment like this with me ever again." And I mean,
Mhm.
that's true about anything. Anybody, any moment you live now in this moment will never be the same as the moment past or
Mm.
next. Everything is unique.
Yeah, absolutely, and very lately, I've been going through my own hurdles, my own my own stuff, and learning that in a relationship, there's the me, there's
Yeah.
the you, and there's the we. All 3 have to coexist and grow independently. Like, I have to grow myself, that,
Mhm.
the you has to grow also, and the we has to grow, and you can't just constantly grow intertwined as well. So if someone comes to you and says, "Oh, you're going to miss this of me," well, it's okay. We'll have another time to coexist as we, because this
And
is
that's
for
just
me.
life. That's
That's
just
life.
life,
That's it.
and I love what you say that about the me, the we, and the you or the other person, because that's translatable to like any relationship, whether it be a
Exactly.
friendship, romantic, work relationship, anything. And so that was the issues, that he wanted things to be completely intertwined. And as soon as I started disentwining things, that's when I was able to, without, I wasn't aware of this right at the time, because I still didn't think I was living through abuse until I approached Women Aware. And, so it was a multitude of things. It was going back to school. It was getting back into my creative practice, even
Seeing
though I'd been
people
out of it
probably
for a while.
even, socializing.
Yeah, I think in my life that had noticed the red flags and I just didn't see it. And the difference was that there was a lot more people consistently saying the same thing.
Uh-huh.
And it didn't feel like a conflict. Like, these were just complete strangers telling me this, right?
Yeah.
Um, so there was that. I think the major catalyst, or like nail in the coffin, so to speak, that made me not go back to that relationship. So back in 2020, two of my aunts passed away. One of them succumbed to cancer, and the other one, um, I was very, very close to. She had lupus and went
Yeah.
for a heart transplant that sadly did not end well, as can
Mhm.
happen, and it really shook me. She was always supportive of my art endeavors. She saw the healing benefits of like creativity mindsets and being creative. She worked in Corrections Canada, so
Okay.
used to do like certain um like rehabilitative or social integration um programs. And she was very inspiring. So
Very inspirational, showing you
very,
that art can really be something healing in your life, as opposed
yeah,
to always living in conflict. All the
yeah,
art that you have inside you, that you can let it out and really let all the darker side of you out, instead of
yeah.
yeah, living in the darkness. So back to your art, once you got back up, what was the most beautiful
So
change that it brought in your life?
so
What would you
and
recommend?
anything that sparks your creativity. And that could be literally anything. It doesn't necessarily have to be the arts. My creative anchor is the arts. It's visual arts in particular. For some people, it might be starting a podcast. For other people, it might be dance. It might be going to the gym and exercising and coming up with different routines. We don't realize a lot of things require being. Not everybody can be like a fine artist or a professional artist, right? But creativity mindset, we all need that at the base. That is a survival mechanism.
Mhm.
It's how you come up with solution building. It's how um, we have that aha moment. It's how we see different things that could evolve around our life, how we map out things sometimes as well.
Our
Um,
uniqueness probably more to who
yeah,
we are at the core, right?
exactly. Fostering our sense of identity
Mhm,
as well as our sense of inter-community identity as well.
mhm.
So creativity mindset is something very vital to nurture.
Okay.
And that's why, sometimes when I see that there's a lot of cuts of funding to the arts, it's to the detriment of this to all of us
Mhm.
because um all of those things can have such a powerful effect. Yeah, like I'm not saying pack yourself with professional projects, but do make time for something that just allows you to go into flow. And if it's something that makes you lose track of time and just time and space ceases to exist and you just feel at peace, that inner peace coming.
Mhm.
Um, and even though there's that push and tug and pull between the inner conflict and that inner peace, if that inner peace is still having that effect and tingling for you,
Yeah.
keep at it because the more you give attention to that inner peace, the more you allow it to be nurtured, the
Absolutely.
the more resonant it's going to be.
And
So yeah,
if you don't mind me adding to that is what I found through a healing journey is you will get sad. You will
yeah,
get angry. You will get a little bit depressed, but
hmm
allowing the emotion to flow will bring you back to you because keeping it in, I feel, is creates a even bigger turmoil. And like you were saying, then it can bring you back to your essence and who you are and your emotions and your art and whatever you let that flow and even let the negative emotions turn into your art because probably you'll have a masterpiece in front of you.
well, that's it's two things. It's that I remember I told you like that was the first thing he took away from me was my art.
Yep.
And literally he took away my sense of identity, my sense of self,
Yep.
because for me that was just so intertwined, and it still is. My art is
You.
me. It's not
That's it.
inseparate, right? And so I just remember feeling completely lost when I first got out of that relationship and, finally had downtime and just getting back into the creative aspects.
Mhm.
I was able to regain control and regain a sense of self. I didn't
Yeah.
feel like I was dissociating constantly anymore. Um, that and something else that you mentioned was the feelings, and something that my therapist back in the beginning, and I still always, was so powerful because, and it still is very powerful, is that, feelings are like visitors. They will come, they will sit and have tea with you.
Mhm.
Just allow them to exist and then let them be on their way.
Becau
And
yeah,
that's
and they're
it.
part
That,
of you, they're an integral part of you, and it's your way of taking out the trash. I just like that
yeah,
analogy, it's like, it's your
yeah.
way of taking out the trash,
Or
and
filtering, also like a type of very powerful filter of what's the good coffee grounds and what's not.
yeah,
So yeah.
exactly. Clara, back to quickly to Women Aware, how has Women Aware, helped you in your healing journey?
Yeah, so Women Aware was really what made me realize that what I was going through was abuse.
Okay.
Um, you know, I think I wouldn't have gotten out of my situation or have healed as quickly without both therapy and, you know,
A
going to Women
community.
Aware.
Hmm.
Um, because the therapy was helping me address certain things that were connected that I had experienced during my life to the abuse and, doing the self work and whatnot. Whereas Women Aware was helping me connect to, oh, the actual abuse, but also it made me feel less alone because there were some things I remember I would just talk about. And it's just when you've gone through an experience like that, it's hard for others to fully understand or grasp.
Hmm. Because it's
Yeah.
probably the first time for everyone, and when it's the first time, you don't recognize the signs and symptoms. So by being around people who have either gone through it or can inform you and educate you about it, you can immediately regain some kind of power and realize the signs and symptoms you're going through at the current moment or with your partner.
Yeah, that and I needed to hear from somebody else and I didn't realize I needed to hear because I thought I was making a big deal out of nothing. I needed to hear somebody else had gone through the same thing and I need to hear not just that some of the examples I were giving had nothing to do with me. That oh, this is a pattern of behavior. I remember crying during the first call with my mentor at the time and you know just things that she was sharing, I was like, "Oh my god, he did that to me too."
Hmm.
And me sharing things and she's like, "Okay, this is really freaky." And this is where, when it comes to abuse, it's super important to understand that it's a mechanism. It's a form of coercive control and power play.
Yep.
So, abuse can have different manifestations depending on it being tailored to the person that it's going to affect, the
And the
victim, right, or
person
the
giving it.
survivor. Yeah. But it's the same mechanisms at play, whether that be on an individual level or an organizational or a systemic level.
Okay.
So that was, I think, Women Aware was incredibly healing, and I'm very happy to be part of a cycle of compassion, a cycle of change now within the organization. And I knew that I needed to stay involved with this place that literally, I probably wouldn't be here
Hmm.
still without both them and everything else, my support system, my therapist, and everybody above that went through it. But they were a major part of my healing journey.
I mean, obviously, to everyone who's listening, if you feel uncomfortable in a relationship, you're not sure about it, find a support system, a community, a group. If you live in Montreal, start by www.womenaware.ca, go and visit them, or even just speak to a close friend or even a neighbor, just to see where you're at and recalibrate to get
And
yourself
and
in a better
and the hotline,
position.
I
And
mean,
a hotline. Yeah.
that's how I first started with Women Aware was I called the hotline.
Hmm.
If for reference, the number's 514-489-1110. But like I just calling somebody and talking to them on there, they were active listeners, they were empathic, um, and they actively checked in on me. They just didn't leave me hanging, or it wasn't just me hanging up and bye bye. I also didn't, you know, I said I wanted to, they respected they asked me, hey, can we call back to check in on you? It's like, yeah, actually, I could really use that.
Ah, that's
Um,
good. The
yeah,
checking back because you've got backup. It just gives you the feeling you've got a backup.
somebody actually cares.
Somebody actually cares and you're not alone.
Somebody actually
Yeah.
cares. That's was also the thing.
Clara, before we conclude the podcast, first of all, I want to thank you for coming on board. But I'd like to tell you to tell us where we can find your work and where we can find you, because we've talked about your art and we've talked about what you do, and where can we find you?
Yeah. So, again, I'm a transdisciplinary Indian Quebecois artist working from an ecofeminist lens here in Montreal. I do sell my work in a few shops. So there's like a feminist bookshop in Montreal called Librairie Lugadienne where you can find my work. If not, if you check me up on either Instagram or LinkedIn, I have my page. My business is called Art and Wellness.
which we will
And
put in the summary. So if you want to go and click on that, you can go into summary and find all the necessary links to find Clara and
yeah,
her work.
yeah. And then on LinkedIn, it's just my name, Clara Olivia Lebec. And yeah, I, like I said, my philosophy is that we are nature. And when we foster that sense of gratefulness, peace, awe, um, and interconnectedness between every living organism, no matter how minute, I think that is how we nurture our creativity and
Thank,
cultivate peace.
thank you,
Yeah.
Clara. Thank you for sharing, for opening up about your journey. And I just want to tell everyone on our next podcast about IPV, we're going to have Clara's colleague, Chris, who's also a survivor of abuse. And we're going to discuss the topics of the dynamics between related to the call to action from an abusive relationship and the healing. So you won't want to miss this. To all you fighters and warriors out there, please get inspired and keep the focus on how important you are. This is it for us for today. Tune in every week on your favorite podcast platform. If you want to get involved with the Be Guided, Be Inspired community and you want to share what kind of impact you've had, what kind of story you went through, and you want to share it because you want to allow other women to feel seen and understood, come and see us on the platform at www.beguidedbeinspired.com. Write us and we'll connect together. Let's change the world of women one conversation at a time. Please, we deserve it. Keep sparkling. See you next time. Have a lovely day. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.